champion here against Danny Jessup, who last year he was the first person out. This year he got in pretty early, and he's making the most of it. He's in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, great run for him and Jim Davis, his friend, who he has traveled to a lot of these events over the course of the year. You know, they went to Dallas together earlier on, trying to get some points. Both paid off with season championship invites to the Players' Championship.
That's fun. They've gotten stuck in airports together. I remember them getting stuck in Houston for an extra night, but they've done what it takes to get to this tournament, and it's been worth it. You see these players shake hands. We'll be underway here in just a moment as Nelson is on 6 cards. He'll start things off for the Mystic Monastery. To Jessup, he has a shambling event. We'll see what turn 2 brings here for Nelson. The one thing to note, too, about their deck, going towards a lot of copies of Monastery Mentor. Polluted Delta, land number 2 here for Brad. See if Danny can actually get to the board here. He's a little slow out of the gate. Just going to play a forest and pass the turn back. Over to Nelson, who picks up a mountain for the turn.
And I think he did not have land number 3 coming into the turn, and his hand is flush with 3 drops, including Painful Truth. So that was a huge draw there.
Well, if you're under no pressure and you got to mulligan as well, where do I sign up? Painful Truth is an absolute delight right now. He's going to go with the Monastery Mentor, however, and simply pass the turn back.
It's not like Jessup's deck is flush with a lot of removal for this. It's got 2 copies of Murderous Cut. Those are a long way of working. Abzan Charm, if Jessup wants to hold up 3 mana and take another turn off, I suppose he has that option. Dramoka's Command, not an option with the board clear.
Here's Nanafenza. Looks like basic planes on the way here from the Windswept Heath. And now we'll head back Nelson's way, as he'll get to untap with the Monastery Mentor. Such a powerful card if it gets to live. It's even made its way into Legacy. I think even Vintage play a little bit.
Pretty good with Moxes.
Yeah, seen worse cards. Time Walk.
Really good with Time Walk.
Yeah, a bunch of other nonsense.
Many creatures are, but that one.
Let's see which route Nelson wants to go now. Does have a copy of Roast in hand. Looks like he will cast Roast, get Anafenza off the battlefield, make a Monk, come across here for 3.
Nelson, I believe, has both main deck copies of Roast in hand and Painful Truths as the leftovers, which is about a perfect set of cards right now. He's going to be able to Roast the next play and gas back up with Painful Truths. If he draws a land next turn, he can do both.
For Jessup, it looks like he'll be going towards a Shambling Vent. Looks like Murderous Cut going to be cast to get Mentor off the table.
Much better for Jessup to have a removal spell this turn for the Mentor rather than a creature. I think if he cast a creature this turn allowing Brad to Roast, he would fall way too far behind. But still a very good opening here for Nelson.
On the upkeep here for Brad, he'll sacrifice a Flooded Strand. 2 basics on the battlefield, so battle lands will enter the battlefield untapped moving forward. And there's a Prairie Stream. We're going to head back Nelson's way now. Looks like Crackling Doom may have been the draw. And the truths are rather painful. Nelson will fall down to 15, but 3 cards on the way. And of course we'll trigger the Prowess there on the Monk token as well. Polluted Delta, in for 2. Jessup's going to fall down to 14. Going to head back Danny Jessup's way now. He'll draw a card, picked up a copy of Abzan Charm. Has a Siege Rhino in hand, couple of lands over there as well. There goes a Flooded Strand. And a Canopy Vista, the weapon of choice here for Jessup. Mana does not appear to be an issue for Danny this game. Anafenza. And the way he's playing right now, representing a card like Dromoka's Command at this stage.
Has Siege Rhino in hand, elected not to play that turn. The 2-mana is a bit suspicious. I believe Nelson is armed with a Crackling Doom, however, so he has a workaround if he cares about Dromoka's Command.
This deck always seems to have a workaround, doesn't it?
The removal spells are pretty flexible. Good against big stuff, good against small stuff.
And Nelson will draw a card. Again, the one thing that Nelson, Anderson, and Ross did is they geared their deck for Standard to be able to beat Abzan strategies. They wanted to be able to crush mid-range decks. And it looks like they've built a deck that's able to do that.
Let's build a bit lighter on the Kolagon's Command, Ojutai's Command side of things. I think they're prioritizing just being able to win brawls against large creatures.
There's Crackling Doom. What's scary for these three players, and the player they're hoping that Jonathan Borowski beats, is Jim Davis.
Yes.
They don't want anything to do with that.
It's not like Brad has no game in the event that he runs into Jim, but if Brad knew that Jim was going to have this deck, I think his sideboard would look quite a bit different.
I do too. Here's Dromoka's Command. Got to take care of that Monk token. Now Anafenza will bite the dust. A Plains. The follow-up. That's a Soulfire Grandmaster. So back to Danny Jessup will go. Wooded Foothills to draw this turn. Another copy of Dromoka's Command in hand. Jessup will play the Foothills. Looks like we might be going to Rhino territory here. And we are.
2 mana up and another copy of Dromoka's Command in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that deck lists are public throughout this entire tournament. Brad knows that Danny's only got the 2 copies. It's possible this turn we're going to see something like activate Soulfire Grandmaster and cast Roast. He may be willing to risk it, and that could be the tempo swing that Danny needs to get back into this thing.
Brad already reaching for mana. Perhaps another Crackling Doom on the way. It looks like Nelson's got a little something to think about here.
Activate Soulfire Grandmaster plus Roast is a very attractive play.
Mm-hmm.
The only penalty is the last copy of Dromoka's Command in the list.
Monastery Mentor. And now here's Roast. This could get ugly.
Well, this is a fine way for Nelson to split the difference. At least this is not his whole turn, and in the worst case scenario, he's still going to get a Monk for his trouble.
Jessup will sacrifice the Wooded Foothills. Gonna go with the Canopy Vista. That will enter the battlefield untapped, given the 2 basics out there.
The only reason that Brad would make this play, I think, in lieu of just rebuying Roast and casting it, is out of respect for the last Dromoka's Command.
And there's Dromoka's Command. Gonna battle the Mentor and prevent the damage from the Roast. And I suppose the question is, does Nelson have a Murderous Cut? Looks like the answer is no. So the Rhino is still looming over the battlefield. And now Nelson will just have to pass the turn back. Over to Jessup will go. Gideon the draw. To go along with Abzan Charm in hand. Jessup working with some good stuff right now.
I don't think he's quite in a position yet to be able to cast the Gideon, make a token, and attack with Siege Rhino. I don't think he has enough defense back right now to protect.
Well, perhaps he feels differently.
But with Brad at 11 now falling to 7, Danny just may want to err on the side of aggression. And keep in mind now, Brad is down both of his copies of Roast, which is the best thing that he can pair with Soulfire Grandmaster right now for a variety of reasons.
Well, there's Gideon. A Knight Ally and a passing of the turn. Nelson going to very quickly untap. Time for him to take a draw. And can he get himself out of this trouble? One of the things about this build of Jeskai Black and the builds that Todd Anderson has played for a while, no access to Mantis Rider, which means they're a little bit softer against Planeswalkers and Gideon in specific. But they are playing a lot of removal this weekend. And removal spells could be what they need to be able to power through this thing.
Brad's going to be loath to take another hit here from the Siege Rhino, but I think the priority for this turn is probably to expend the resources to clear out Gideon and the token if possible. You might take another hit from Rhino on the way back, but hopefully with some Soulfire Grandmaster triggers, you can pull yourself up with a little bit of life gain, give yourself some cushion to work with. Brad also has Painful Truths in hand, so the question is, can he gain enough life and stabilize the board enough to be able to draw 3 more cards?
Kolagon's command. Shoot that and make you discard. That's a heck of a turn. Gain 2 life. Keep in mind, Prowess has been triggered there from the Monk token.
Brad now has a clean shot at Gideon. The only question is he going to follow up with Painful Truths this turn?
That's the big question for me, too.
The attack is going to bring him up to 11. He's going to gain 2 off the Soulfire Grandmaster. The Painful Truths will knock him down to 8, though I suppose he could underpay for it if he just wanted to draw 2 and lose 2.
I actually don't think that's out of the question. Of course you want your 3 cards, but his life total is just on the edge of somewhere where I would be a little scared.
By the same token, Jessup is empty-handed. If Brad finds some sort of red spell to pair with Soulfire Grandmaster, suddenly he gets it all back and then some.
He does have Fiery Impulse in hand now. And there's a Pluto Delta. That's pretty good. Here come the beatdowns. Gideon down. Brad will gain some life. Impulse on Shambling Vent is huge here if Danny does fire that up. How many Smoldering Marshes?
2.
Yeah, of course.
Perfect number. And Brad is just crossing his fingers and hoping that Jessup dials up the Shambling Vent this turn. Means he didn't draw anything of note. He gets to pick up 2 life for his trouble, get the Shambling Vent off the table.
2 life. Oh, 3 life.
3, excuse me.
Spell Mastery, baby. Here come the beatdowns. And given, again, access to each other's deck list, Jamoka's command, don't have to worry about only 2. And Jessup has used them both.
The other side of this, though, is Nelson may want to take this hit this turn to set himself in a position to Fiery Impulse, buy it back, and Fiery Impulse a second time to get rid of the Siege Rhino. So even excluding Jamoka's command, this is not a straightforward play.
There's Smoldering Marsh. And there is the Impulse. Vent down. Brad will gain 3 and then take 4. The follow-up, Silk Wrap.
It's a big one to have.
That is nice.
Cuts off the life gain and means that any spells that Brett Nelson has, just 1-for-1s as opposed to being recursive.
Things to look for here on Jessup's side. He's empty-handed. He's got a Siege Rhino out there. He's only got 1 black source of mana. That's a Shambling Vent. So he can't fire up Shambling Vent next turn unless he draws a black source of mana. On Nelson's side, he's got that Monk token from a Monastery Mentor a little bit earlier. 7 lands on the battlefield. Colors do not appear to be an issue here for his Jeskai Black deck. And the only question is, what is he working with in hand?
I think he picked up a Wild Slash this turn, and that doesn't very little here, of course.
It looks like he's coming into the red zone here with the Monk. Oh, what is this? Maybe a full-price Murderous Cut? Yeah.
That'll play here.
Yes, it will. That'll also trigger Prowess on the Monk. So over to Jessup, you go empty-handed. That'll play 2.
That's a big one.
Yeah. There's a Gideon ally Zendikar. It'll bring a Knight ally along with it. And now Nelson will have to reevaluate again as he takes a draw step. If he has Crackling Doom, life is good.
I think he is on Wild Slash and 2 lands, which does not allow him to get to Gideon.
Mm-hmm. It's always interesting when you watch the Jeskai Black deck. It always feels like it never runs out of ammo, and it kills all of these creatures, and then eventually it has to draw lands eventually, right?
It is really leaning on Soulfire Grandmaster in spots where it draws a lot of lands. And because there's so many draw 3s and no selection in the deck, and the deck has to play a lot of lands to begin with, when the game goes on, it's likely to look like it's flooding out if it doesn't have Soulfire Grandmaster.
There's Wild Slash. Gonna attack Gideon down to 2. Mystic Monastery past the turn back. Now Jessup draws a black source of mana. This game likely ends. Fire up the Shambling Vent. Let's see what he does draw. Gideon up to 3. Battle zones. Nelson down to 1. Okay. Siege Rhino off the top, and Danny Jessup's going to win game number 1 here over Brad Nelson. Obzon aggro up a game here over Jeskai Black.
That's not a straightforward attack there, because if Nelson has Crackling Doom, it looks really bad. But Jessup with a Siege Rhino off the top, that gives him some insurance if that happens to be the last card in hand. Nelson just on lands. There you go.
At that stage of the game, I don't see Danny playing around Crackling Doom, simply because if Brad had Crackling Doom, he'd Doom, kill the token, deal 2 damage to the Gideon, and then finish the Gideon off with the Monk. So I think for Danny, he'll take a look at what he could possibly have, and then I think the attack is relatively straightforward. I don't think he's left without much of an option.
It's too attractive of an attack, and even in the worst case scenario, Siege Rhino's left over in hand, which gives you a good way to rebuild.
We'll take a look at the sideboards here for both players. We are going to go over to Brad first with his Dispel Kolaghan's Command. 3 negates, 2 up, Nixilus Reignited, a Duress, another copy of Painful Truths, 3 Radiant Flames, 2 Roast, and a Ruinous Path. They weren't kidding. They're trying to beat these mid-range decks.
So Ruinous Path and 2 copies of Roast alongside the 2 copies of Nixilus seem great to me. Danny's got enough spells in the deck where things like Duress and Negate are somewhat attractive options, but it's easy to go a little overboard in that kind of stuff since most of Jessup's deck is creatures.
For Danny's side, a Wingmate Rock, a Silk Wrap, 2 Surges of the Righteousness, 2 Ultimate Price, 3 Duress, a Painful Truths, 3 Self-Inflicted Wound, 2 Transgress the Mind.
So I would want some amount of the Silk Wrap Ultimate Price type of stuff as the answers to Jace, Monastery Mentor, and Soulfire Grandmaster. The 3 copies of Duress are excellent in this matchup as well. And with Brad not having anything in the way of sweepers available to him, I would not be surprised to see the 3rd copy of Wingmate Rock come in as well.
Well, those are the options available there for both players. And as I do sideboard, it'll be Brad Nelson on the play, back against the wall for what feels like the first time this weekend.
Well, it's definitely the first elimination round he's played.
Yeah.
Because he's cruised through the group play stages, and he just has not been tested a whole lot over the course of this tournament.
Well, we will now talk about the regional championships here with Star City Games, where we have this fantastic playmat and a whole bunch of details to tell you about.
Go.starcitygames.com/regionals for more information. We just posted the venue, so you can find the regional championship closest to you. It's going to be on February 6, 2016. The format will be modern. And this playmat and token, free registration for the first 200 players to sign up for their particular regional championships.
Now remember, with the structure change to the SCG Tour for next year, it's very important that you do play in regionals if you're looking to get to the Players' Championship like the 16 players have this weekend, because the place where you can get SCG points are, of course, our Opens, our Classics, and then at regionals. That is it. So first place at the regionals will get you 15 SCG points, so on and so forth. And as Patrick did mention, we did have all of our locations announced this weekend. So make sure you go over to go.starcitygames.com/regionals, find the location closest to you, and plant your flag February 6th, 2016 at our regional championships. Brad Nelson, Danny Jessup. For Brad Nelson, our defending champion at the Players' Championship, won the $20,000 in the big old trophy last year, looking to do so again, and so far he's made it look pretty easy, though down a game right now.
You can have a great performance. You can be undefeated through the group play, and it could end this abruptly. It almost felt like just a guarantee that we were going to see Brad in the top 4 and beyond.
It felt that way, right?
And already one bad draw, one tough match away from being eliminated.
29 years old, currently living in Roanoke, Virginia, of course, from North Dakota originally. The 2014 Players Champion is how he did qualify 8 Open Series top 8s, 1 win, 2 Invitational top 8s with a win in Indianapolis a couple of years ago. 99 Open Series points this year. We didn't see a lot of him on the Open Series because, well, he's the defending champion. He just gets to play in this thing again.
Didn't even bother to attend the Invitational in Las Vegas last weekend. Wanted to focus his efforts on testing for the Players' Championship, and he's been well rewarded thus far, though, again, just a game away in this match from being eliminated.
Yeah, as far as preparation goes, it's hard to say who the most prepared player in the field is, but it seemed like through Legacy and Modern, he has nailed it with deck choice.
Well, the format has been, for the Players' Championship at least, has been solved for a while. Setting aside the Commander product and how that could potentially influence Legacy, we've known what the format is going to be for all the legal cards for a while now. So Brad has been working over the course of several weeks planning for all 3 of these formats.
Death and Taxes in Legacy, Abzan in Modern, and Jeskai Black here in Standard. A little bit of a different Jeskai Black build, but kind of taking advice from Todd Anderson on the best way to build this deck, along with Michael Majors as well. Update for you guys in our backup match. If we have time to jump that way, of course we will, but Jim Davis, Jonathan Morowski going to game number 3.
Not a surprise there. I was expecting that one to go the full 3. I think play draw is significant enough in that matchup that I would be surprised if anyone 2-0'd the other.
Jessup will take a mulligan here, see if he can find a better hand. For Nelson and Jessup, their first time playing against each other. We, of course, have the stats for every player, and if they have played against each other, and Nelson's record against the Players' Championship field, 9-8-1 overall, with a 65% win percentage this year on the Open Series. For Danny Jessup, 9-10 against the field. Looks like Danny's going to keep this opening and going to scry the top card to the bottom. We're underway here in game number 2. Nelson will start things off with a Mystic Monastery. Flooded Strand, the first draw step here for Jessup. A Flooded Strand and a passing of the turn back over to Nelson. A roast of the draw. A Smoldering Marsh and a passing of the turn. Jessup will sacrifice the Flooded Strand, fall down to 19, and he'll go with a copy of Sunken Hollow. Looking for a little bit of black mana off the white-blue fetch land. We'll see if Abzan Aggro can stand up to all these removal spells yet again. Jessup was able to fight through it that last game.
Nelson's hand looks very removal heavy again, though I believe light on card advantage. I don't see a copy of Painful Truths or Treasure Cruise hanging out in that hand.
And Duress here in Jessup's hand. See if he might want to lead off that way. Looks like he will. Get a good look at what Nelson is working with here. He's got a roast, a crackling doom. Looks like a murderous cut and an utter end. Another copy of roast. And a polluted delta. But as you said, no real card advantage, no way to gas back up just yet.
So murderous cut in the long term is the most mana efficient of the bunch. If Jessup has a path to Gideon here, though, maybe utter end is the card. Nelson's hand right now not very good against Gideon with the exception of the utter end. The rest of the removal just strikes me as too redundant to really attack. Cut if your hand's all creatures, and utter end if you have a planeswalker.
Let's take an utter end. Don't know if that means he has Gideon. Don't know what that's really saying, but utter end is probably the most problematic, I think, of the bunch.
Doesn't necessarily mean that he has Gideon already, but the logic might be all these cards are kind of interchangeable, but if I draw Gideon, I want the coast to be clear.
Flood Strand the land. We head back Nelson's way. Gonna sacrifice a polluted delta. Basic Swamp, the weapon of choice. That's a nice draw.
Pretty big draw step there.
Yeah. Painful Truths. 3 cards coming. And I don't even think he has a discard.
No, thanks to the duress, he's at 7.
I've seen worse draw steps. Jessup will sacrifice, get himself a Canopy Vista. See what Danny can put together for his 3rd turn. Shambling meant the draw.
It's possible if Jessup is making the choice here between Obzon Charm and Mana Fenza, he just has to cast the Obzon Charm. I don't know if there's a lot to be gained by just putting a creature on the battlefield right now when Nelson is flush with so much removal.
And you know it. You've seen his hand from duress. You know he's got roast over there, among many other things. Though Jessup might be just thinking to himself, I might as well just get this Anafenza out here and get past this stage of the game. That's what I think he might be saying with this play.
I just don't know if he can get out of this stage of the game for a long time.
Sure.
Brad's hand's like 6 Terminates.
Rattle Sacrifice, a Bloodstained Mire. Now, it does get really bad if it's Soulfire Grandmaster plus Roast in this turn. Things get really ugly then. Yeah, things just got ugly. Brad gonna gain 5 life.
And what's especially bad here for Jessup is now that Nelson has put a threat onto the table, his draw to Gideon isn't even as good as it once was, because it's very likely that Brad will just be able to attack and burn Gideon down should it show up.
Yeah, this just got very difficult. Jessup with an Obzon Charm to draw some cards, play a land, pass the turn back. Nelson, he'll sacrifice a Polluted Delta, fall down to 19, get himself a Prairie Stream. We'll see what comes next here for the defending players champion. How about a little Painful Truths yet again? More card drawing. Gassing back up. Here comes the Soulfire Grandmaster. He'll gain 2 life here. Simply pass the turn back with a stocked grip. Over to Jessup. Another copy of Anafenza. Perhaps that's why he cast the first one. He's got so many of the gosh darn things.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of spots.
It feels that way.
I think that casting Anafenza gets him nowhere, but certainly keeping them in his hand doesn't really do a whole lot either.
Here's a basic forest. Might be time for Anafenza now, with access to Jamoka's command. He's going to go with a Den Protector.
This is some way of him trying to play the resource attrition battle. It demands a removal spell because it's currently checking the Soulfire Grandmaster, gets something for his troubles on the way back. Unfortunately, Brad is outclassing him by such an extent on that access that I still think it's a losing battle, but it's the best thing he can do with his hand right now.
Bloodstained Mire. And Nelson's going to sacrifice that, fall down to 17. See what lands on the way here. It'll be a Smoldering Marsh. And now a Monastery Mentor. And a Roast. Unmegamorph Den Protector, it will get a counter briefly. And it's going to return a copy of Duress. And this is the way to try to slog through all this crap.
I mean, in theory, yes. In reality, Brad has 4 more Terminates in his hands. It's going to be a tough way to try to do it.
It doesn't feel like he's out of Terminates.
Again, it's the best that Danny can do under the circumstances.
Yeah. And Danny going to start off with a Terminate. Brad, okay. More than happy to show the hand here. 2 Crackling Dooms, a Roast, a Murderous Cut, and a land.
Okay.
Yep, Danny can't poke a hole through that one, and he will concede the game right away. Brad Nelson going to win game number 2 here over Danny Jessup. Jeskai Black, Obs on Aggro, getting ready here for game number 3. That's what Nelson's looking to do in this matchup.
It's possible that Danny can work through that hand in a long game, the one that he duressed early on, but when Brad drew a copy of Painful Truth, it blew the whole thing wide open. If Brad is sitting back on a bunch of Terminates, then cards like Den Protector and Gideon give you some hope of battling through it. But when Brad's also winning the card advantage battle, forget about it.
The other issue, too, there is, Brad's about to kill him. He's got a Monastery Mentor, Monk, so far Grandmaster.
By the time we get to that stage of the game, I mean, who cares? The ship sailed by quite a while there. But early on in the game, that hand that Brad revealed to the Duress early on in the game, it looks really powerful. And it is. There's a ton of removal spells there. But that hand is vulnerable to the game going long and Den Protector, Absalom Charm, and Gideon allowing Jessup to just gas up and overpower it just with 2-for-1s. But when Nelson draws Painful Truths, he's ahead on cards and can answer everything that Danny does. And the game was really determined on that top deck on turn 3.
You see the options here again for both players. They might change some things based on the play and the draw, taking a look at each other's deck list. So they'll get ready here for game number 3. Jim Davis, Jonathan Morowski, they are in game number 3 back there. So if we do have an update for you guys, or if we're able to jump that way, we certainly will do that. Jim Davis looking to play spoiler here with that Green-Red Eldrazi deck. The wild card of the tournament, at least on today, it feels like.
It's the most exciting deck of the tournament to me. You look at Antrazi's selections, they were unorthodox, but it's not surprising that Antrazi played something outside the box. He plays big mana strategies all the time in unorthodox legacy decks. Jim, this is a calculated metagaming roll of the dice, a deck that I don't think he would ever play in an open or invitational, but he is just making a guess on what the Players' Championship field was going to look like. And so far, lines up pretty close to what he's predicting.
If he can get by this match, maybe he plays against Brad in the semis and then Todd in the finals, and it could be very tough for him. Or it could be very good for him, excuse me.
It's about as well as he could draw it up.
Mm-hmm. For Danny Jessup, however, he didn't want to take anything away from him. Number 9 seed coming in today, the 23-year-old from New York, season 3-point champion. And we see him a lot on the Open Series, both last year and this year. And truth be told, I'm pretty happy for him that he was able to make it here this year because last year was such a heartbreaker for him.
Yeah, he's a very easygoing guy and doesn't necessarily express a ton of emotion at the table, but missing last year stung. When you come that close to qualifying for the Players' Championship and you fall short by that much, he was definitely bothered by it and redoubled his efforts to get to the Players' Championship. Didn't even have to wait till the end of the year to get one of the at-large bids, was able to snag the point leader in Season 3, and is now making the most of his opportunity.
And what's so interesting here is that on one side, the match right over, his very good friend and travel partner, Jim Davis, if those two both win, they could get squared up.
Alongside Kevin Jones.
Yeah.
Another good friend of theirs.
Indeed. That Northeast contingent having a heck of a weekend.
Something of a rogue element.
A lot of people rooting for Kevin Jones at home. Danny going to take a mulligan here. The self-proclaimed daddy of the Open Series, whatever that means.
So, we have a shuttle taking us from the hotel to the tournament site.
We do.
Kevin Jones is known to be late for various things. So we're waiting, but we got to get over to the site. People got matches to play. We got set up coverage, that kind of stuff. And he comes down as we're loading up the van, and Chris, our Star City employee who's handling all the transportation, goes, "Hey, do you want to ride over there?" And I guess Kevin has a car. He drove down to the event. And he goes, "Don't worry about me, homie." Just wandered off.
Yeah.
Perfect Kevin Jones moment.
Really is. He's good to go, man. He'll be here. Don't you worry.
"Don't worry about me, homie" is the most Kevin Jones thing that's ever come out of Kevin Jones's mouth.
If you've never met Kevin Jones, an awesome guy. He's an awesome guy. He's humble, and he just likes to play Magic.
Yep. 15 players and one work of fiction in the Players' Championship field this year.
See if Danny likes this opening hand. Brad kept his 7. It looks like he will keep. Now he's just got to figure out what he wants to do with the scry here. Looks like that card will go to the bottom. Game number 3 about to be underway. It's a Sunken Hollow and a passing of the turn. For Nelson, a Mystic Monastery. He'll kick it back over to Jessup. Flooded Strand the draw here for Jessup. Play a Flooded Strand, just pass the turn back over to Nelson. Crackling Doom the draw here for Brad. And here's a Jace. First time seeing this in the match. Bloodstained Mire going to pull him down to 19.
And I'm curious how much of the Ultimate Price Silk Wrap kind of action does Jessup have here. With Brad not having copies of Ojutai's command in his list, it's a lot more attractive, if I'm in Danny's position, to be boarding in more spot removal, even the ones that don't exile. It's hard to battle that kind of fight against the list with Ojutai's command because the game's going to go on for a long time, and if you're playing with a bunch of Ultimate Price type effects, those creatures are probably coming back. With no copies in the list, maybe you play more Ultimate Prices post board than you normally would.
Gonna head back Danny Jessup's way now. Murderous Cut the draw. That answers that question, doesn't it? Here's Anafenza, however.
It's especially important for Jessup to be able to answer Jace on time because Nelson has boarded into so many removal spells that if Jace flips, it's guaranteed to be, at the minimum, one more removal spell. Mm-hmm. And since Nelson's game plan in the matchup seems to be just exhaust all of Jessup's threats, it's very bad for Jessup to allow Jace to flip.
Yeah, I think the thought process for Brad in the matchup is you'll draw lands eventually.
Yep, eventually you'll flood out.
Yep. I can kill everything that you do. And your removal is pretty limited as well for my Soulfire Grandmasters, and I can just keep this train rolling. It didn't work in Game 1. It did work in Game 2, however.
Another path Nelson can take in the matchup is just trade, Monastery Mentor, and play a spell or two in one turn. Even if Jessup can immediately answer it, there's the leftovers in play, and Nelson can ride those to victory.
Nelson trying to figure out what he wants to discard here with Jace. Be shocked if he didn't have an answer there for Anafenza. I think he's just trying to figure out how he wants to sequence his turns, and you can actually see Crackling Doom in his hand.
Murderous Cut.
What's interesting about Crackling Doom, however, is that Doom is almost kind of, I would say, reserved to take care of Gideon.
Yes. It's a removal spell that ignores Stramoka's command. If those are still in the deck, maybe they're not. But it still is insurance against Stramoka's command being left up, and it's a smooth answer to Gideon. So I think Brad wants to avoid playing that removal spell until the last possible moment, or if he's getting Gideon for his trouble.
Flooded Strand going to be sacrificed here by Brad. There's a Plains. And now, Soulfire Grandmaster. Interesting play. Over to Jessup now.
Going to give Jessup one turn with Anafenza.
Yep.
But with Murderous Cut in hand, there is an incentive for Brad to develop his board because he will likely be able to play 2 spells in a turn and kill Anafenza and the follow-up play. Any of his 3-mana pieces of removal or the roast paired with Murderous Cut clears out both. So he takes a turn off of sorts. He is going to get hit by Anafenza here. But it makes the follow-up turns a lot more smooth.
There's the attack for 4. Flooded Strand will be sacrificed. Jessup down to 17.
Takes a lot of discipline on the other side of the table to be willing to take the Anafenza hit. But Brad knows it's about mana efficiency right now, and if a follow-up here is Siege Rhino, Brad gets paid off big time. Because his next turn will be kill both of your threats and flip Jace if he wants it.
There's the Rhino. Nelson going to fall down a little bit lower. Well, let's see what Brad can put together here now. Going to start things off by sacrificing a Bloodstained Mire. That's card number 4 in the graveyard. Smoldering Marsh, the weapon of choice. It'll enter the battlefield untapped given the 2 basics. A Jace activation. Time to draw and discard. Picked up a copy of Shambling Vent. Nelson also has a copy of Utter End in hand.
Utter End, another card that is reserved for Gideon, and means that Brad can be a lot more aggressive using the Crackling Doom this turn alongside the Murderous Cut to clear out both creatures if he wants to.
There is Crackling Doom. Down goes Anafenza. Now here's Cut. Down goes Siege Rhino. Come on in. Soulfire Grandmaster. Up goes Jace. It's a beautiful turn.
And this is why, if I was in Jess's spot, I'm not sure if this play is necessarily correct, but I would have at least considered using the removal spell on Jace when he had a window to do so. Because if the Jace flips, it's going to swallow up another turn and another card. The Jace flipping guarantees essentially a free terminate for Brad. And when Jessup's deck is, at its core, a bunch of 3 and 4 mana creatures, I don't know if he can afford that sort of tempo and card advantage loss.
Painful Truths here from Danny Jessup. 3 cards on the way. And now all he can do is pass the turn back. Not good to take that kind of turn off here either. Looks like Brad will get to do the same thing. He'll gas back up.
This is quite the card.
It's pretty silly. Everyone's been writing about it, talking about just how busted this card is. It's making its way into Modern, a little bit in the Legacy now.
It's going to be the barometer on the standard format for as long as it's legal, too. The only question to me is going to be, are there enough beatdown decks where you can't really afford to play this in your main deck?
Because that's the only kind of thing that keeps something like this in check, or beatdown decks.
Yeah, it's only the Atarka Red style decks that prevent you from being able to play 2 or 3 copies in the main deck minimum.
Here's Siege Rhino. Along with the Shambling Vent. But you know Nelson's got this covered. He's got a Jace out there.
I mean, Brad's got 3 Painful Truths, 2 Treasure Cruise. And Treasure Cruise is banned in Eternal formats.
Yeah. Just gets to play it. There's Prairie Stream. He'll tick down Jace. And now there's Crackling Doom. Rhino down. In comes Soulfire Grandmaster. Follow up is another Soulfire Grandmaster. And now we head back Jessup's way. And the problem here for Jessup is he's still in that 1 card per turn territory.
And he's also getting beat on every front. He's losing the card advantage, the damage race, the inevitability. There is no phase of the game where right now where Jessup has an advantage. Also, Brad has flashback ancestral recall in his graveyard. You know,
At a cost. At a cost.
should things slow down,
Yeah. Pluto Delta the draw. Brad going to analyze the board here. Gideon has finally shown up. I think he might even have his Ruinous Path in his hand.
is flashing back an Awakened Ruinous Path with 7 lands in play good?
Tough to say. Unclear. My immediate answer is yes.
Jace doesn't even die.
Yeah, it doesn't. No.
Ready to flash back. Terminate for 1 mana or Ancestral, depending on what Brad fancies.
Man, this deck just kicks the crap out of this kind of deck. It really does. Activate. Oh, Crackling Doom.
Buyback Terminate also is fine.
Sure. Gonna knock Gideon down to 2, gain some life. I think we might see him clear out Gideon now. Maybe just attack Danny. Nope, Gideon down. This deck is a real hoot.
This is checkers versus chess of mid-range creature matchups.
It really is.
There's no comparison to the power level of what these decks are doing. Not to say that Danny can't win at all, because he did take a game here, but he can never miss a beat. And even when he curves out perfectly, he's still at the mercy of Brad's best draws.
Ah, Duress. Ruinous Path, Utter End, Crackling Doom Island. Pick a card, any card. That's an appropriate response.
I think Danny is starting to sense the end of the road here.
Yeah. This is just a lot to overcome. And you really put it best. If anything goes really wrong, this gas back up with Painful Truths. That's terrifying.
I mean, as long as Ruinous Path is in Brad's hand, it's almost like Jessup's creatures aren't even really castable.
Gonna sacrifice a Flooded Strand now. Nelson right on the cusp of the semifinals. Has not lost a match yet this weekend. 3-0 in Legacy with Death and Taxes. 3-0 through Modern with Obzon. This is his first standard match today. Had a bye coming into this portion of the tournament. And he's making it look pretty easy now. Here's another copy of Gideon. That'll bring a Knight Ally along with it. We'll head back Nelson's way. One of his specialties is metagaming, and he's pegged it this weekend.
The only real fear that I see for Brad, I mean, you can always lose a match of Magic.
Of course you can.
But the real fear there is going on the other match right now.
Yeah.
So what's going on? Because if Jim Davis gets out of there, that's a sweat for Brad.
Yes, it is. Jonathan Morowski, no slouch himself, but he's playing Obs on aggro. And Brad is beating up on this deck right now. And if I'm Jonathan, I'm really hoping that Danny can somehow get out of this. Nelson going to start by taking Jace down to 2. Means he's going to be able to recast a spell here. Crack and Doom again. Redirect over to Gideon. This forces Jessup to have another copy of Murderous Cut in this instance. Or we could just see Nelson fire up Shambling Vent, truthfully. That's a little bit safer. Make sure to kill Gideon here. Gideon down.
Please confirm Brad exiled the Crackling Doom in the flashback.
Den Protector the draw here for Danny.
A source of card advantage. It's a 2-for-1.
Expert analysis.
It is a 2-for-1.
You're not wrong.
Catching up on the card count.
You are technically 100% right. Jessup going to try to slog on.
Yeah, there's still the faintest hope if you're Jessup.
It's tiny,
If
but
you
it's
if
there.
you find an answer for the Soulfire Grandmaster,
Well, he's got a Murderous Cut in the graveyard.
yeah, there's
He gets to kill Jace here with Shambling Vent. That's not irrelevant. He's got a cut in the graveyard that he can get back with Den Protector, do that all in one turn to kill the Grandmaster, and then maybe something can happen.
But Brad's just stocked with so much removal, and I believe another copy of Painful Truths.
Picked up a copy of Duress for the turn. Might want to see what's going on over there. We got our other match result. It's a big one. Jim Davis wins his match over Jonathan Morawski, 2-1. For Jonathan Morawski, he is out of the tournament. For Jim Davis, our Season 1 points champion, this gamble of a deck choice has paid off. He's into the semifinals, and he'll play the winner of this match.
And with Jacob Wilson eliminated earlier on today, it feels like the field at the minimum is all acceptable matchups.
Yeah.
And might be quite a bit better than that.
Now remember, our finals is best out of 3 matches across a bunch of different formats. This here's a Painful Truths.
Soulfire Grandmaster fueled Painful Truths. Ancestral buyback.
Ever heard of it? Better or worse than Whispers of the Muse? Brad will play a Mountain, pass the turn back. Wingmate Rock.
Another
source,
2-for-1.
Another source of card advantage.
Another 2-for-1.
It might look like one card, but most of the time, it's 2.
2.
Yeah.
Trigger a raid, you get a 3/4 flyer, which is
It's pretty big.
pretty big.
Den Protector going to go face down.
This is the squeeze that this deck puts you in. I've been watching it for a while now. If you leave in too much creature removal, you get buried by Painful Truths and removal spells, and Treasure Cruise and Ojutai's command and Kolaghan's command. If you don't have enough creature removal, and any of the creatures stick, they're good enough to win the game by themselves as well. So threading the needle, while also applying enough pressure to shorten the length of the game, because this deck is so powerful when the game progresses, you cannot miss a beat on anything. And this game, Jessup was not able to kill the Jace in time, and that was too much.
It's funny, the 3 creatures in this deck, Jace, Soulfire Grandmaster, and Monster Mentor, they're basically Planeswalkers.
Yep.
All of them, I understand that Jace transforms into a Planeswalker, but they're basically all Planeswalkers. They're not just like, Tarmogoyf, which is just a 2-mana, like 7, 8, or whatever. Soulfire Grandmaster, every part of this card is relevant. The lifelink, the ability to do what it's doing, the fact that it costs 2 mana, it's all relevant.
The creatures in Brad's deck, as you mentioned, they're pretty close to Planeswalkers. The creatures in Danny's deck, for the most part, are just numbers. And Brad's deck is pretty good at invalidating numbers.
Yeah. It looks like Danny's going to try to return Painful Truths here with his Den Protector.
But he's even at a spot now where he's got to be concerned about his own life total.
Yep.
But I think Painful Truths is the best route. There's no way that he can win with the resources that he has in his hand. And all the cards in his graveyard besides this are a dead end as well. So
Now, I believe that Murderous Cut should go back to Brad's hand. I think he activated Soulfire Grandmaster to do that, so we'll make sure that that's actually technically correct. We'll ask our table spotter there. Because that's what all the mana's tapped for, was to rebuy.
so many resources to spare that he forgot about his free Terminate.
There's Painful Truths. Jessup's going to fall even lower down to 4, looking for some help. 1 is a Shambling Vent. 2 is a Dromoka's Command. 3 is a Warden of the First Tree. I don't even know if he has a land that enters the battlefield untapped for a Siege Rhino.
I also don't think he can cast Warden and Dramoka's Command in the same turn.
Well, the chances of the Warden living are very high,
It's really, I mean,
so he'll get to block with it.
and Offenses in the hand. That's 4/4.
That's
so
a 3-mana 4/4.
bigger than the 2/2.
Yeah. Over to Brad, we're going to go. He'll untap and draw. Soulfire Grandmaster, the draw step. Jace is active now. Might be time to fire up the old Shambling Vent here. Try to saunter over for the W. And that is going to do it. Brad Nelson's going to win this match here over Danny Jessup, 2-1. Jeskai Black absolutely dominates Abzan aggro. Danny able to get a win out of that, but you saw in the sideboard of games, Brad's able to get the bad cards out, get even better cards in, and the defending players champion is still undefeated here this weekend. He's on to the semifinals.